جی بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم. تو کانسٹیٹیوشن آف پاکستان 1956 ہم ڈسکس کر رہے تھے کانسٹیٹیوشنل ڈیولپمنٹس ان پاکستان میں. لاسٹ لیکچر میں ہم نے ڈسکس کیا تھا کہ کس طرح سے ایک پارلیمنٹری فارم آف گورنمنٹ کو پرووائڈ کر رہا تھا یہ کانسٹیٹیوشن, اور اس میں ہم نے پریزیڈنٹ کا, کیبنٹ کا اور پرائم منسٹر کے رول کو ڈسکس کیا. اس میں ہم نے پریزیڈینشیل پاورز کو دیکھا کہ یہ کتنی ایکسکلوسیو پاورز تھیں پارلیمنٹری فارم آف گورنمنٹ کے اندر پریزیڈنٹ کو, کہ وہ پرائم منسٹر کی ایڈوائس پہ چیف جسٹس آف پاکستان کو, ججز آف دی سپریم کورٹ کو, اٹارنی جنرل کو, پرنسپل ملٹری آفیسرز کو وہ اپوائنٹ کر سکتا تھا. اسی طرح سے نیشنل اکنامک کونسل, نیشنل فائنانس کونسل کمیشن اور انٹر پروونشل کونسل, اسلامک آئیڈیالوجی کونسل اور اسلامک ریسرچ آرگنائزیشن فار اسلامک ریسرچ اینڈ انسٹرکشن, ان سب کی جو کانسٹیٹیوشن تھی اس کو بھی, اس کی پاور بھی جو ہے وہ پریزیڈنٹ کو گرانٹ کی گئی تھی. اور اسی طرح سے پریزیڈنٹ بینگ دی ہیڈ آف اسٹیٹ, ہی واز انڈر لائبلٹی ٹو ریز دی ملٹریز آف پاکستان including the naval, the air force and the military of Pakistan. اسی طرح سے جو فیڈرل کیپٹل تھا اس کو ایڈمنسٹر کرنے کا اختیار جو ہے وہ بھی پریزیڈنٹ کے پاس تھا. پریزیڈنٹ نیشنل اسمبلی آف پاکستان کو سمن کر سکتا تھا, پروروگ کر سکتا تھا, اور اس کو جو ہے وہ جوائنٹ سیشنز کو بھی بلا سکتا تھا. اس کے پاس لیجسلیٹو فنکشنز جو تھے وہ بھی اس حوالے سے انارمسلی جو ہے وہ دیز پاورز ور ویسٹڈ ود ہم. اور اسی طرح سے پریزیڈنٹ نیشنل اسمبلی کو ڈیزالو بھی کر سکتا تھا, جیسا کہ ہم نے پہلے بھی ڈسکس کیا. اف ہی تھنکس دیٹ دی پرائم منسٹر اینڈ دی کیبنٹ ہیز لاسٹ دی میجورٹی ووٹ ان دی پارلیمنٹ آف پاکستان. تو یہ کافی ایکسٹینسو قسم کی جو پاورز تھیں وہ پریزیڈنٹ آف پاکستان کے پاس جو تھیں, اور آلدو ان میں سے زیادہ تر جو تھیں دے ور بیسڈ اپان دی ڈسکریشن آف دی پرائم منسٹر. اس کے بعد اگر ہم جو ڈسکس کریں جو اس کا ایک اور جو اس کا بڑا امپورٹنٹ فیچر ہے اس کانسٹیٹیوشن کا, وہ یہ ہے کہ اٹ واز پرووائڈنگ فار دی فیڈرل فارم آف گورنمنٹ. اور یہ اس میں پرووائڈ کیا گیا تھا کہ پاکستان کا جو گورننس اسٹرکچر ہے دس ول بی بیسڈ اپان فیڈرلزم. although we have been hearing the voice of an independent member of the second constituent assembly, Mr. Fazlur Rahman, who was strongly in favor of unitary form of government, but the 1956 constitution it embodied the federal characteristics of the governance. It was a written constitution which was providing for dual polity and distribution of powers between national and provincial governments, and a provision for the establishment of Supreme Court of Pakistan. تو ڈیول پولیٹی تھی اس میں, ایک تو فیڈرل گورنمنٹ تھی, فیڈرل لیجسلیچر تھی, اور اس کے ساتھ ساتھ جو ہے وہ پروونشل لیجسلیچر اور پروونشل گورنمنٹس جو ہیں ان کی پروویژن بھی تھیں. تو ڈسٹریبیوشن آف پاور کے حوالے سے اور ڈویژن آف پاور اور ان کی لمیٹیشنز پاورز کے اوپر, اور لیجسلیچرز کی اسٹیبلشمنٹ, کریشن, پروونشل ایز ویل ایز فیڈریشن, اس کے اوپر جو ہے وہ ان ڈیٹیل جو ہے وہ اس کانسٹیٹیوشن میں وہ بات ہوئی تھی. although کہ جو گورنمنٹ آف انڈیا ایکٹ 1935 تھا دیٹ واز آلسو پرووائڈنگ فار دی فیڈرلزم, but we can find a significant difference among these two federalism characteristics of this constitution and of the Government of India Act 1935. That federalism, that was if we talk about the Government of India Act 1935, this was providing for a centralized federation in which the central government that was enjoying extraordinary discretionary and other powers on the provinces. So theoretically it was a federation, but practically most of the powers they were resting with the Federation of Pakistan, or sorry, India. But in this constitution, we can see that the powers were decentralized and they were divided among the units, among the provinces. The powers were devoluted to them, and the center, it was not intended to keep all those powers with it. Instead, they were distributed, not only the executive but also the legislative powers, they were devoluted to the provinces and units. And we can say that this was an extraordinary step that was taken by the Second Constituent Assembly of Pakistan, and it was they adopted very liberal approach in this regard. And this is true to say that a strong governance cannot be ensured without the insurance of distribution of powers at the grassroots level, at the level of provinces, districts and tehsils, which was not possible without the decentralization of the federation. So this provided for this. This ensures the economic, psychological, political development in the country, in the region. If we look into the India, we can find that although they also provided federalism, but that their federalism that was centralized. Most powers they were resting with the federal government of India. A few of them were resting with the with their units, with their provinces. But conversely, in the Constitution of Pakistan 1956, majority of the powers they were resting with the provincial governments, with the provincial legislatures, and the central government, it has got supervisory, and most of the powers it has got, they were related with the foreign affairs. So this was, I think this was a positive benchmark which was attained by the Second Constitutional Assembly of Pakistan. So we can find if we talk about the legislation, we can find three legislative lists in the Constitution of Pakistan 1956. Number one, the federal list, number two, the provincial list, and number three, the concurrent list. We got same lists, three lists in the Government of India Act 1935. Similarly, we have got the federal, the provincial and the concurrent list. But in terms of division of power and division of different segments on which the legislation can be done, there was enormous difference in between these two constitutions. As we talked about it earlier, the provincial governments, the provincial legislatures, they were empowered with more powers as compared to the Government of India Act. So if we look into the federal list, the Parliament was given exclusive power to make laws concerning 30 items in the federal list. So federal list got only 30 items as compared to 61 items which were provided by the Government of India Act in the federal list, and as compared to the 66 items which were provided by the draft Constitution 1956 in the federal list. So finally, the Constitution which was approved by the Second Constituent Assembly, in that these 66 segments they were reduced to 30 items, only 30 items on which the federal government, the federal legislature, the National Assembly of Pakistan, the Parliament of Pakistan can legislate. The subjects given to the center included foreign affairs, comprising all matters which would bring Pakistan into relations with the international organizations or the independent states. This includes defense, currency, foreign policy of Pakistan, Pakistan's trade with the other nations, recognition of states, insurance, commerce, inter-provincial trade, corporations set up by the federation, industries owned wholly or partially by the federation, posts and all forms of communications, roads, networks, airlines, minerals, oils and gas. So these were included in the foreign list of legislation upon which the Parliament of Pakistan can legislate. The provincial list was most comprehensive and included 94 items. So we got only 30 items in the federal list as compared to 94 items which were included in the provincial list. We got these 94 items as compared to only 54 items which were provided by the Government of India Act 1935. So in that act we got only 54 items in the provincial list, but in this constitution we got more comprehensive list, and in it we got 94 items on which provincial assemblies were competent to legislate. And if we compare it with the draft constitution, in that we got only 48 items. So the final draft, which was approved by the Constituent Assembly of Pakistan, second Constituent Assembly, they enormously increased this number of items on which the provincial assemblies can legislate, and they closed it at the number of 94 items. These included public order, administration of justice, police, land, agriculture, local government, education, public health, sanitation, industries and corporations subject to the provincial lists, factories, regulations of mines and material development subject to the provincial and concurrent list, forests, electricity and other subjects of local interest. The most important feature of this constitution was that for the very first time the railway department that was also allocated to the provincial governments, that they would execute and monitor it, they would administer it and they would legislate it accordingly. But as a matter of fact, till 1958, till the abrogation of this constitution, this feature could not be exercised practically. So after these two lists, let's talk about the concurrent list, third list, which was the part and parcel of this constitution. This was the smallest list in volume in terms of number of items provided. It only provided for 19 items and was justified on the ground that there were certain matters which could not be given exclusively either to the center or to the province. I mean to say there could be some instances where this could be thought that the center could intervene on this subject, keeping in view the security and the unity of the federation, while on certain occasions we can find that there is no need of the federation to intervene in this matter. Instead, this could be dealt by the province itself. So for the sake of resolving this confusion, they provided for a concurrent list on which both the federation and the provincial assemblies, they were competent to legislate. But if both of them they legislate on a single matter, then the legislation of the center will prevail over the provincial legislation. The federal legislation that would be given priority. The list dealt with such matters as civil and criminal law, scientific and industrial research, price control, economic and social planning, inter-provincial migration and quarantine, trade union and other matters of common interest. So with regard to subjects in the concurrent list, the precedence of federal legislation was guaranteed, as I talked about it earlier. Now the question was that to which the residuary powers would rest. Would it be the central legislature or the provincial legislature? Because with the passage of time we could encounter with some subjects which are not outlined in the central or in the provincial legislature, and we need to define it and frame it that in which institutions competence or jurisdiction it comes. For example, in 1956 we don't have to deal with the technology, but as we are talking about it today, the things are altogether different. We need to legislate about the admissibility of electronic documents, emails, texts, and so many things. We are developing things with the passage of time. So who will legislate on these residuary matters? So this was decided that the provincial assemblies would be competent to legislate on these residuary matters which haven't been dealt with in these three lists. But if we review it generally, and if we analyze it completely, we can find that after all, the central government, the federal legislature, it still had important role to play in this regard, because the central government is keeping the matter of foreign affairs. It is drafting, it's developing the foreign policy of Pakistan. It is signing MOUs, agreements, treaties with international organizations, with other states, with the United Nations, with the subsidiary institutions of the United Nations. So whatever it is signing, it is carrying the obligation and responsibility to implement that in its federation. So in this way, Federation of Pakistan can bound the ambit, the scope of the provincial governments, provincial legislatures on certain areas, that where the federal government has signed an agreement, an MOU, a treaty, the provincial governments would be bound to abide by that. They would be bound to abide by the policy decision taken by the central government, the federal legislature in that regard. So in this way, the federal government, the central legislature, the parliament can influence the legislative procedure of the units or of the provinces accordingly. In it, if any type of dispute arises in between the federation and the provinces of Pakistan, the units of Pakistan, or any dispute between two units or two provinces of Pakistan, this was decided that the matter would be referred to the Chief Justice of Pakistan, who would constitute a tribunal to look into this matter and decide accordingly, and who would furnish a report to the Chief Justice of Pakistan. The Chief Justice of Pakistan will then forward this report to the President of Pakistan, who would act accordingly and who would decide finally in this regard. So I think that's it for today. Thank you very much.